Hi everyone, I'm here today to talk to you about all of the books that I read in April. As usual, I will link all of them in the description box down below if you would like to go and find out more. Now, if we were to go by the thumbnail, we would assume that I had a really great reading month in April, but I did not. And this is the reason that I did not. All of these books here, I am part of the way through. So I'm not going to be speaking about these today because I have not yet formed an opinion on them, but I wanted to mention them because I want to know how your reading is going at the moment. Because mine is just a bit like the rest of me, all over the place. And it's almost as if I'm searching for specific answers within books. And when I don't find it immediately, I'm going to something else. I'm just feeling very scattered. And I think that that's okay, but it is vexing me slightly at this point. So what I want to do in the very near future is film a reading vlog, which I'm going to call something like finishing these damn books. And then in that reading vlog, I want to finish all of these books here. And because they have been on my bedside table since lockdown started, or a little bit before. So I either want to finish them or just decide that they're not for me anymore and move on with my life. So I will be doing that soon. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the 4 books that I read in April. Correction, I read 3 books in April, but I'm also including the first book that I read this month in May, just because I only use the month as a vague marker for talking about books. And hopefully in May, I will have lots of books to speak about at the end of the month, and it will balance things out. So I have 4 books to talk to you about today. The only one that I'll briefly mention that I'm part of the way through is Pride and Prejudice, because I'm reading that on Instagram stories, and every weekend I am uploading an omnibus, so presenting an audiobook to you of Pride and Prejudice, and the first instalment of that went up on Saturday, and I will link that in the description box down below. So of the books that I did gel with enough to finish and not abandon halfway through, my goodness. There was a mixed bag, actually. Just looking at them on the floor, which is not very helpful for you because you can't see them from the floor. Let's talk about, should we talk about the most disappointing one first? Is this one. It's called Disappearing Earth, and it is by Julia Phillips. And this was one of our Patreon book club picks. We've picked our next picks. We've chosen our next books. If you want to join in, I'll link it in the description box down below. This book pictures itself as a novel about 2 young girls who are abducted, and then about the community responding to that and how they cope with it. I thought this was going to be, I guess, like Broadchurch. It's a reference. I've just started, well, I haven't just started watching it, I've just finished watching it, finally. I thought it was going to be that kind of thing, where you follow members of a community in order to solve the crime, and that is the core of the book. I had put this forward as a potential book club choice because I was really hoping to read some detective fiction. I wanted a strong narrative to follow, and that's not what this book is. So it is not a detective novel. On the flip side to that, it's therefore not a novel about horrible things that happen to children, which I appreciate. I haven't read Reservoir 13 by John McGregor, but by all of the reviews that I saw on BookTube when it was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize a couple of years ago, this is very much like this. That was also a novel about a child that went missing, but then the complaints in the reviews that I saw were that actually it was a short story collection. And that's what this is. This is a short story collection. The first chapter is about the girls going missing, but then each subsequent chapter is set a month afterwards, and we meet different characters in the community. But they are not talking about the girls going missing. There will be one sentence, if that, in their chapter where they reference that event, or maybe they walk past the mother of the girls on the pavement. But it's not about that at all. It's about their lives. The frustrating thing about that is that I love short story collections. You know that I love short story collections, but when we pick up a book, we have certain expectations about it and we choose it for a reason. And I think this was the wrong time for me to have read it because, as I said, what I wanted was a detective novel, and that's not what this book is. And it's infuriating because I think that the description of the book does this book a disservice, because there will be many people who read it expecting one thing and get another. I will say that I thought the author's writing, especially when it came to relationships, was brilliant in how uncomfortable it was. There are a lot of power dynamics that she discusses in these stories, daughters and mothers, also romantic relationships where people are with a partner who doesn't respect them, but we get so far into their brain that we completely understand why they're still with this person, even though we're screaming that they should leave them, because she has completely made you understand how little self-esteem they have. I would recommend this book, but just know that you're getting a short story collection. And if that's not your jam, then maybe give it a miss. But if it is your jam, read it, because the characters are very compelling. I decided that I would read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Atesha Moshfegh because it is lockdown, and I thought that this was a novel about a person who decides to sleep for a year, which on the surface, that kind of is what it's about, but also, as one might expect, it is much more complicated than that. So our narrator is someone who decides that she cannot deal with life at the moment, and therefore she wants to be prescribed lots of drugs so that she can take them and that she can sleep, not have to engage with her friends who she's decided that she hates, and not have to think about her complicated past and her relationships with her parents, both of whom are dead. It actually is a comedy. It's a very, very dark comedy, a very privileged dark comedy. I realise that I have likened a few things to Fleabag recently, but I would throw Fleabag into the mix with this one. It's quite similar in tone too to Sally Rooney's Conversations with Friends and Aleph Batuman's The Idiot. Those kind of books where if you don't gel with the sense of humour, you're really going to dislike it. And you're reading this book thinking, actually, what is the point, please? And where is this going? That is the point. You are supposed to question the whole essence of this book, because that is what the narrator is doing about her own life. I would describe the humour in this as treacle-like, and her therapist so reminded me of Laura Dern's character in Marriage Story, the lawyer, if she was drunk, and what she would say when no one else was paying attention. As I said, the humour is very dark. So her best friend, Reva, she seems to keep around because she likes, again, feeling better than her. And there was this line that made me giggle snort so much. I felt as though Reva were a stranger I had hit with my car, and I was waiting for her to die so she wouldn't be able to identify me. I have to admit, when I was reading this, I wasn't sure if I liked it. And I think maybe that is the point, because it is so meandering, because you are searching for the meaning and you're just wondering, what is this going to turn into? And that makes for a surreal reading experience. It means that you're reading it feeling almost as drugged up as she happens to be. And then you get to the end and you're like, sorry, what just happened? Which is exactly, again, what the narrator has been feeling. So I think that is very successful in what it sets out to do, in that it wants you to question what it's doing. And I did actually find that quite an enjoyable experience. Next, I read Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell, and like everybody else, I adored it. So this is Maggie O'Farrell's latest book. I have read 2 of her books before, Instructions for a Heatwave and her non-fiction book, I Am. I think this is my favourite out of the 3, closely followed by the non-fiction, which I would particularly recommend. This novel, and this is on the blurb, so it's not a spoiler, is about the death of Shakespeare's son, Hamlet. But it's not about Shakespeare at all. In fact, his name is not mentioned once inside this book. I'm going to talk about it briefly because I wrote a review of this book for Toast, and I also did an Instagram live with Maggie O'Farrell, which you can now watch because it is on Toast's IGTV. Essentially, I thought this book was so brilliant, and I was worried about reading it at the moment because it is a book that is set during a time of plague. So in this, both of Shakespeare's children, he actually had 3, but we're mainly focusing on the twins, Judith and Hamlet. Both of them get bubonic plague, and at the end, only one of them survives, Judith. And it is on the run-up to Shakespeare writing his play Hamlet, which he wrote whilst grieving for his son. We go back and forth between the present day, 1596, when Hamlet and Judith are sick, and when Agnes and Shakespeare met each other. The language is very rich and playful. She talks about kittens having faces like pansies, and when I read that I was thinking, oh my goodness, yes they do, but I'd never thought of it like that myself. The reason that she doesn't mention Shakespeare's name, it's for a few reasons. It's because we all know enough about Shakespeare anyway. Well, I'll get to that in a second because I'm not sure that's actually true, but we can bring a lot to the table about Shakespeare. And the point is that Agnes doesn't understand her husband's life in London. He is the son of a glove maker and he went to London to sell gloves. He's now become a playwright and she doesn't understand how famous he is and how much money he's making. She only sees the money that he brings back. And because this book is essentially about Agnes, we can bring the context to the book and see how naive, I suppose, she is being about her husband's life. Or maybe naive is the wrong word. He just hasn't spoken to her properly. His communication with her is just not very good. So that's one of the reasons she doesn't mention his name, because she doesn't need to. It's also not a book about him. It's about his being a father, and his name as a father is not William Shakespeare. His name is Dad. So that absolutely makes sense. And also, as Maggie said when I interviewed her, it sounds ridiculous when you write William Shakespeare on a page. If you say that William is having breakfast and you're talking about Shakespeare, it just sounds ridiculous, like you're making some kind of joke. So she just said she just wanted to get rid of the name entirely. So I did like that. The one little disappointment I had was that nowhere in these pages is Shakespeare talked about as a queer person. Agnes guesses that he must be with other women when in London, but she doesn't guess that he could be with other men. It kind of makes sense in the novel as a whole because we are seeing things from Agnes's point of view. So maybe that's just something she never thought of. But when we're talking about Shakespeare and new stories, I do think that was a slight missed opportunity. I would have liked more hints about that, if nothing else. But the storytelling is genius, and I don't know how she manages to create such tension when you know what the ending is going to be. I think it's because you're just so strongly willing that it's not going to happen and this boy is not going to die. Maggie said something when I interviewed her that honestly I nearly started crying in the interview. She said that Twelfth Night, which she also wrote after Hamlet, premiered in London on what would have been the twins' birthday. And obviously Twelfth Night is about twins who are taking each other's places, who are dressing up as each other, and there's a lot of imagery of that in this book as well, as twins wanting to swap places, and that just made everything extra heartbreaking too. Agnes as a character is a person that we come to love. The locals think that she's a witch because she enjoys making remedies, but she's doing exactly what the men who claim to be able to cure the plague by strapping toads to people's chests are doing. In fact, actually, she's doing it more effectively, but because she's a woman and she's asserting herself, she can't just be a woman. She has to be labeled as something else. All the women in this book who stand up for themselves or are seen to be standing up for themselves are presented as an other. That's not something or a trait that could be associated with women. You must therefore be a different form. When women are standing up for themselves as characters on stage, they have to be portrayed by men because women couldn't do that. They mustn't be so bold. So when Agnes is doing that, she's seen as somehow manly or as a witch, either of those two things, but definitely not as a woman. And I really enjoyed all of the commentary on that as well. I will link my review of this in the description box down below if you would like to go and read it. If you would like to win a copy of Hamlet, actually, Toast are giving away a copy, and that giveaway is open internationally. All you have to do is leave a comment on my review, engaging with the article. So talk to me about why you want to read it, not just a simple, please enter me into the competition. Let's have a chat. So I will link that review in the description box down below. And then finally, the first book I read in May is this one here, which I will only say very few things about because I sped through this, and this is Secret Smile by Nikki French. Because Disappearing Earth hadn't quite been the book that I had hoped for genre-wise, I decided to definitely go for a crime thriller. And I have been searching for something that I would love as much as their Frida Klein series. Sadly, this is not it. I have read another standalone of theirs called The Lying Room, which I preferred above this, and then the Frida Klein series I have liked the most. This I think I enjoyed slightly less because it's not a procedural. It is about a specific relationship. So it's a first person thriller and they're trying to solve the crimes themselves, and I think I like some kind of police interaction. However, this was infuriating in all of the right ways. It really gets under your skin. Our main character Miranda breaks up with her boyfriend Brendan, who she's only just started seeing because he's a bit of a creep. He's been letting himself into her flat, he's been reading her diary, and she just thinks, no thank you, next please, goodbye. So she thinks that he's gone, but then it turns out that he started dating her sister. And the relationship that she has with her sister is one where her sister always thinks that she hasn't done as well as Miranda. She hasn't succeeded as much. And so when Miranda tries to persuade her that Brendan is not very nice, Brendan has got there first, tapped into the insecurities of her sister, and has made the whole family think that Miranda is still in love with him, that he finished with her, and that she has a problem that she should get sorted. And he manipulates her entire family, and it is just so, even just thinking about it, it was really stressing me out somewhat. It gets obviously very dark. A little bit scary. It moves extremely quickly. I did not find most of it in the least bit realistic, but I did enjoy the ride. The reveal, it was okay. So it was what I needed, I think is what I'm saying. It was what I needed. It was fast paced. I got through it in a weekend. And I think sometimes when you have so many books, as I showed you at the beginning, that you're part of the way through, just that feeling of finishing a book gives you a sense of relief, almost like you've convinced yourself you're never going to finish another book ever again, which is obviously not true, but you just need to do it to remind yourself that you can. So I have bought some more Nikki French books and also some other female-led detective fiction that I'm excited to get to, because that's just a need I have right now alongside reading all of the usual stuff that I normally read as well. So I'm hoping to find some new books that I love. I think I've spoken for quite a long time, so I am going to be quiet now. And as I said, all of these books are linked down below if you would like to go and find out more. Please let me know what you have been reading, because I would like to know, and I'll speak to you guys very soon. Lots of bookish love. Bye.